Hey folks, welcome to my first live stream. I don't know if anyone's out there, so somebody write something in the comments so I know if you guys can hear me, because I'm not sure I've got this equipment thing figured out yet. Anybody? All right, let's go. Can you guys hear me or no? Okay, excellent. Let me see here. Frantic Pillow, are you buying more Tesla? Okay, so first question, am I buying more Tesla? The answer to that is probably yes, at a slower rate than I was before. Partially it's because of the long run up that we've had here, but also because I see some opportunities outside of the stock market right now. I'm going to be investing or two here in the future. So I don't know if you guys know this or not, but I own a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu academy as well as a bar and a couple of other businesses. So I see some other opportunities right now outside of the stock market, particularly here in California, where there's so many distressed businesses. So, okay, so I'm gonna go down and bear with me, guys. My first live stream. I have no idea what I'm doing whatsoever. So I'm gonna, here you go. Okay. So I just wanted to say hi to Frantic Pillow, Normal and Relaxing Life, Rene Alfonso, Tobu, NCS. If I massacre these names, I apologize. Min Tran, can you share your portfolio? I can share parts of it. My wife doesn't want me to disclose everything, unfortunately. Am I buying more Lee from Edward Liu? Edward, I actually don't own Li Auto, and I disclosed in the video that I was thinking about buying. I haven't bought any at this point. So, okay, here in Fresh Aquariums, he says, "Sup, dude, BNGO price target. I think it's not just exuberance, but a hold. I think it's going to go up super fast because of some hype, though. So maybe taking some profits and buying back in." I'm actually I think you guys know that I have more than a passing interest in genomics at this point. I'm not an expert by any means, but I mean, put it this way, I have more knowledge than, say, the layman does, but I'm not a geneticist by any means. So I'm working on a video right now for BNGO, but also one on genomics in general, where I think that a large amount of the people that are really, really excited about genomics really don't understand anything about DNA or why it's so exciting. So I kind of want to do a video about that too. So that one will probably take at least 2 weeks to do, because I need to either find some video, some animation that I want to show, or do it myself. And that would be really, doing it myself would take a long time since I'm not a great artist. Okay. Okay. So let me scroll back up here. Mr. Negative. Hey, how's it going? You're a frequent commenter. Thank you very much. I turned on the super chat thing, guys. I don't know what it is. Somebody from YouTube said I should do it, so I did it. I have no idea what that is. Okay, so let's talk about the obvious news today with NEO. I'm not doing a NEO video today. It's because I'm tired of doing videos on NEO. NEO is absolutely fantastic. They absolutely blew away their delivery targets for the month. And they're hitting, 7,000 deliveries for the month is pretty much hitting the maximum production capacity that they're predicting they're going to have by the end of January, which is about 7,500 units per month. Hopefully, they say they're going to be able to up that production to about 15,000 units a month by the end of the year. That would be absolutely fantastic. And so I'm pretty excited about NEO's results. I'm really excited about NEO's NEO Day coming up here pretty soon. I just want to maintain a level of calmness, though, when you're taking a look at this. Here's the thing that keeps going through my mind, guys. Somebody has to end up being the sort of Netscape of the EV world. Somebody has to end up being the AOL of the EV world. And if you're old enough to remember those two companies, then you'll remember that during the dot-com days, they hard charged out. Everyone thought Netscape was going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread. Everyone thought AOL, their stock was just going to continue to go up and up forever. But what happened was that they ended up getting outcompeted by newer players that came out of the market relatively quickly after they did. So I'm not saying NEO is going to do this. relaxed. Let's be reasonable. I'm going to be acquiring more NEO, not because I don't think it's a good stock, just because it's still such a huge part of my portfolio at this point that I don't want to have more than 10% of my net worth in any single stock. I don't care if it's Tesla. I don't care if it's NEO. I don't care what it is. I don't want to have all of my assets tied up in a single company. And I'll tell you why. I actually worked at Enron in 2000. You guys, I wasn't an employee there. I was actually a contractor. But I watched people who had their entire life savings in Enron, tell me this is the greatest company since sliced bread. They've changed the way that natural gas is traded. They've changed the way that natural gas is used. We're all going to be billionaires. And of course, we all know what happened to Enron. It ended up being a giant fraud, and the whole company collapsed. So that's kind of where I am. I'm not accusing anyone, of course, of fraud or anything like that. All I'm saying is I want to be a little bit more cautious. I want to spread out my investments across some of the new EV players in China. The one thing that doesn't convince me of NEO's eventual success is the fact that it's backed by the CCP. If you guys knew about the whole permitting process for a new factory and what it takes to actually get that manufacturing permit, you'd realize that everyone who's producing automobiles by the CCP in China right now. And so that argument kind of falls a little bit flat for me. So you could say the same thing about Xpeng. You could say the same thing about Li Auto. You could say the same thing about NEO. The government subsidies and the push to make EVs, a thing in China, make the new energy vehicles a thing in China, that is what's going to be the rising tide that kind of lifts all boats. And I'm thinking 5-6 years from now is when we see this giant winnowing out process where some of these players are probably going to go under. And who knows who those players are. We're still not even seeing some of the other companies that are out there producing vehicles right now in China. They're not getting any news coverage in the United States right now. And there's a lot of them. There's probably going to be 100 vehicle producers in the next 2 years making electric vehicles in China. So I'm going to move on here and try to answer some more questions. We see. Oh, thank you. I think you are the first one to actually use the super chat feature. So $5, Mintran, thank you very much. That's literally almost the first $5 I've made on YouTube. Okay. How do I think Biden will affect the stock market? Okay. I did a video a while back on the elections and the stock market, and basically no one watched it. It's when I was getting started, but you would be surprised which party is the better party to have in the White House. And you'd probably be surprised that it's always better for the stock market to have a Democratic president and a Republican-controlled Senate. But who knows why? In fact, there's actually academic research on this and tons of academic research on this. And I'm not going to get political. I'm not taking a political position, guys. That's not what this channel is for. But there's tons of research into this subject. And there isn't a reason why the stock market performs better under Democratic presidents with Republican senates. It just does. So, and there have been a dozen different explanations that have been put forward, but none of them, in my opinion, are very convincing. So, what are my top 5 stocks for 2021? I've actually been trying to make that list for a while, and I haven't gotten around to it. So, I will, and I'll make a video on that. So, Etsy and CRISPR, gonna buy CRISPR. I already own. That's one that I bought sort of before I knew about ARK Invest. And let me talk about being involved in genomic stocks here. This is one where I've left that completely in the hands of Cathy Wood. Not because yes, I am a Cathy Wood fanboy. Let's be honest. I do think she's wonderful, but I don't think that everything that she does is correct. She's going to make calls that are wrong. In fact, it's not just. Eventually, that is actually certainty. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but most mutual fund managers don't outperform their index, and even if they do, they're not able to repeat that performance over long periods of time. This is something that I don't know why this keeps sticking around over and over and over, but it does. But when it comes to genomic stocks, there's so much to know out there. There's so much to understand. I find it absolutely fascinating and absolutely wonderful to explore this, but I just don't have enough time to explore all of those companies on my own and make make the decisions that I would be comfortable that I'm making those for the right reasons. Like for me, it's a lot easier to understand circuits. It's a lot easier to understand electronics. It's a lot easier to understand electric vehicles. It's a lot easier for me to understand software. It's far less easy for me to understand DNA, which DNA is a biological programming language, just like computer software is. It's not quite as simple as that, but anyway. So this is something that I've really left up to Cathy Wood, and I own her ARC-G fund. I do have a couple of other individual stocks in genomics, but that's really, they're small amounts. Like I own 100 shares of CRISPR. So I'd love to see a video of you and a, oops, I lost that. I'd love to see a video of you, a CPA, on a good way to track and manage investing taxes throughout the year, not just at tax time. Thank you, and happy 2021. That's actually something that's in the works right now. One of my Jiu-Jitsu Academy students is also a CPA, and we've talked about having him on to do sort of regular discussions about taxes. And do you have any insights on the SPAC OAC? This is something that when you guys ask me questions, you're going to hear more often than you probably do from other people. No, I don't have any thoughts on it. I haven't looked at it yet. Sorry, guys. So, okay. Let me see here. Could you please comment on lean neighbors? Just talked about that as future potential. Do you believe that Cathy Wood from ARK Invest said that passive index investing is dead? That's not exactly what she said. And I do understand what she's saying, and I am actually in favor of what she's saying. There's going to be this huge level of wealth destruction as we see a realignment of industries. And she's not saying necessarily that it's dead, but that it's going to trail investing that's based on rights law at this point. I think I understand that to be true. I think that investment funds that are focused on rights law, looking at cost declines, sort of S-curve adoption of technology and that sort of thing, at least for the next decade or two, those are probably going to far outperform. Probably going to far outperform passive indexes over a long period. And I think that at some points in history, this is always going to be true, and we're entering one of those periods. Thoughts on just on what you know, GBTC, that's something else that I don't know. Thoughts on QuantumScape, is it a buy at the current price of 75? Let's talk about financial advice, guys. On a YouTube live stream as financial advice. I think you guys know that I am a registered financial advisor at another firm that the firm is called Client First Capital. I brought on Amar Shah a couple of times this year. We had conversations. Before, I used to say I don't have any affiliation with him. That's not true anymore. As of December 24th, I think I was registered with this firm. So there's a limit to what I can say with QuantumScape. I will say one thing. I'm not buying QuantumScape at 75. I love the technology. When I read what we're looking at is lab results. What people are excited about right now is lab results and not road testing of the vehicle or anything like that. And the lab results are convincing. I'm not going to say they're not, but I don't think it's worth it at $75 a share. There's a lot that needs to happen before that company even makes any revenue. They are a pre-revenue company at this point. So Jafar Trunkesh, hello from San Diego. Hello from San Diego. I actually live just south of San Diego, close to Chula Vista. So Chris N., thoughts on Nano Dimension? Nano Dimension, yeah, I have thoughts on Nano Dimension. Once again, brilliant technology. I don't know how large that addressable market is for that company. When I look at the actual number of units that they've sold this year, it is not reflective of what their price has done. I don't understand how the price keeps going up and up and up on very little news. The only news that's really coming out is the fact that they keep having secondary offerings and diluting shares. There's rumors, of course, that they're preparing for a acquisition. I don't know that those are true, but the rumors are so substantial and so similar that I'm thinking that it might be true. Does that acquisition help them out in the long run? I don't know. So the jury for me is still out on Nano Dimension. I'm actually a lot more excited about the BNGO, the bio-nano genomics than I am on Nano Dimension. I know they're in completely different fields, but as an investment, I'm more excited about that. But like I said, I'm not done with my research on Bionano. So, would you buy into Neo at these prices? Yes. Yeah, I would. This is, and I'm thinking, remember, guys, I do not care what the price of Neo is going to be next week, next month, or even next year. When I buy a stock, theoretically, my holding period is forever. Like if I did what a lot of YouTubers do and say, hey, I'm going to post my trades in, on my Patreon account or whatever, it would probably be the most boring Patreon period, because I buy things and then I sit on them and I almost never hold them. So I almost never get rid of them. And some of those are losers, and a lot of them are winners, and that's just the way it's gone. The deal with being a frequent trader, and this is something that if you've read, I can't remember, it's a book by Jack Bogle, but he talks about this. For every transaction between a buyer and a seller on the stock market, there's a winner and a loser. You can't assume that you're smarter than everyone on the other end of that transaction. You can't assume that you're better informed than they are. And you should probably assume the latter, the opposite of that. Exchange where there's a 50-50 chance of you being the loser, the more frequently you're going to lose. And, a lot of times, and like I said, this is one of the reasons that I don't necessarily like taking my high growth stocks and being in a mutual fund or an ETF, because they have a short-term goal that I don't have. I don't care to make stock or to make money in 3 months or even 9 months. I'm looking at 5-7 years down the road before I really start to reevaluate whether or not I think something has fundamentally changed that affects the future of the company. I know personally a lot of people that dumped Xpeng stock back in mid-December when it started to decline on really no news that would affect the future of the company, say 5-10 years from now. And they didn't necessarily buy back in after the run up that's coming now. So anyway, so let me go on and look at some more. What do you think about the future of Bitcoin and other cryptos? So a long time ago, so I own some Bitcoin. It's not very much. And really it's kind of a hobby and more of a hedge. But here's the deal with Bitcoin. I recognized a long time ago that Bitcoin was here to stay, largely because it's so penetrated the criminal world at this point. And it's one of the primary mediums of exchange. And particularly if you're off the major exchange, like I can't even remember the name of the service that I use, but it's the one that Coinbase is the one that I use. If you're off of that exchange to buy, that one actually is completely compliant with U.S. laws. They report everything to, the government and all that. But in terms of its use in the criminal world, that's what's probably going to make Bitcoin. That's probably what made it legitimate. And it's kind of sad to say that, but that literally is probably one of the things that made it legitimate. Is it became a medium of exchange in the criminal world, and for that reason, I think that but here's the other thing. I think that as the price of Bitcoin keeps going up and up and up, it actually leaves, and let's say it becomes the reserve currency of the cryptocurrency world, like Cathy Wood says. I think it actually leaves room for other currencies to develop, and I think that we're seeing Ethereum start to take off now and really grow. It was up 20% yesterday. For reasons I can't explain, but I think that you should be keeping Bitcoin at least as an alternate asset class in your portfolio. Maybe 2 to 4% of your portfolio as a hedge against everything else. The nice thing about that is it's not as tightly correlated to stocks. Meaning, when stocks go up, it doesn't necessarily go up. When stocks go down, it doesn't necessarily go down. It has its own behavior that's maybe. It's not quite as tightly correlated to stocks as other asset classes are. And that's one of the things that's changing about investments that people haven't talked about very much, is the fact that all asset classes are now more tightly correlated than they were before, because investing has become so democratized. There's so many new people that are investing, so many regular people that are able to invest now because of financial innovations like the Cash App and like Robinhood and things like that. So let me see here. Stephen, when you sell stocks and take a capital gain, do you have an opinion on using opportunity zone funds, which eliminate paying taxes? Have you used it? So that's not quite exactly what opportunity zone funds do. They don't eliminate your entire tax burden, but also, so I've looked into this for a couple of clients before, and one of the areas that I was looking in, where I was actually, my buddy Amar and I, where his office is, I would come in and then consult at his office for a few clients for some business consulting, and that was considered an opportunity zone. The average price of a home there was $1.2 million. So how is this an opportunity zone? I didn't understand that part. And that was kind of one of my criticisms of that. But I haven't really done enough investigation in this to give you a real clear answer. But I think I will do a video on that here pretty soon. Okay, let me see here. Jack Ma's disappearance and Ant Group. Yeah, here's my comment on that. Number one, I can't get any of my friends in China to talk to me about that. That's something that they feel like is probably flagged on all of their social media. But number two, I think that the Chinese Communist Party was probably worried that Jack Ma was going to be the next president of China, whether or not he was the president of the Chinese Communist Party. He's an enormously popular guy, and for good reason. I think he's absolutely brilliant. What do you think of banks for the dividends? I think that there's some near-term opportunity in banks, meaning you're going to grab these assets at a pretty low price right now. And I think that 2 to 4 years from now, it's going to look like a pretty good investment. Long-term, though, they're not going to be able to maintain their payouts. Little by little, their empire is starting to crumble because of financial innovations. And this is another time when I think Cathy Wood is correct. This is probably my least favorite of her portfolios, is the fund. But I do think she is correct that people don't want to deal with the larger financial institutions anymore. We are finding new ways to do business, more convenient ways to do business, and banks are falling behind. So I don't think they're going to be able to maintain those high payouts. I have moved away from making direct investments in companies for like a dividend growth portfolio. All right, somebody just sent $5 in the live chat. I'll scroll down here in just a minute. I wanted to say thank you very much. Like I said, this is the first time I've done this, so I don't know how this works. Let me see here. What do you think about? I'm curious about your thoughts on branching out into additional IT sectors. ERP is one. I think that's actually a certainty at this point. In fact, from the number of people that I know that have been hired to work for them, I would say that that's got to be a certainty at this point. And they've recently poached a couple of people from a couple of developers from HubSpot, and so I think that that would be quite a bit further down the road. So Fresh Aquariums asks, have you looked into FSRX deeply? I have not. Sorry. For Great Wall Motors. My thoughts on Great Wall Motors are this, Chrissy Alpha. I just don't have enough information on them. The information that I do have tends to be a bit biased. It's just what is leaking out into our media right now. Like there isn't enough investor interest in the West in this company right now to get me good information right now. Okay. Maximo Chow, you mentioned that you were adopted. Does your ancestry result indicate somehow you might be from Asia, like from the Philippines? Yes. So when you do ancestry, it gives you results. So I did ancestry in 23andMe because I wasn't really anything in my adoption records are actually true. So I did both of them because I wanted to compare. I wanted to compare the results. They were different, but similar enough that I'm like, okay, this is not fake at least. Right? At least it's real. They both identified that my primary source of ancestry from my birth mother, the country that was from. I'll let you guys keep guessing because that's entertaining. Basically, my entire life, everyone has an opinion on what I am. No one's ever guessed it correctly, and I didn't know until I was 44 years old. So it's never really mattered that much to me. But I do find it entertaining to guess. But both of those results were relatively similar, but you have more access to records to do research. If you go on Ancestry.com, you have far better health information on 23andMe. Okay. Let me move on here. Duckies is me. Okay. Let me see here. Do you like the cultural NEO and battery swapping advantage, or Xpeng's manufacturing more Tesla-esque advantage? So I consistently underestimate the power of brand loyalty. I did that with Apple my entire investing career. Like, I've always owned Apple, but there were many times where I came into money and I could have dumped. I had a good year. It made a lot of in the way of income. And I could have dumped a lot of money into Apple stock, and I didn't do it. I spread it out, or I made investments in other places, and I missed out on that opportunity to generate real wealth. There are certain, you guys will figure this out about me. I'm a little socially awkward in a lot of ways, and there are certain mysteries of human behavior that I don't get, and the power of brand loyalty is one of those. I don't understand it. So in studying this, I realized that NEO is developing that sort of cult of personality around William Bin Lee, just like Apple did around Steve Jobs. So here's another big mistake I made with Apple. I thought that Apple was mostly a cult of personality, because by the time I was able to use Apple products, because I worked for the government before, and at the time we weren't allowed to use any Apple products because of security concerns. By the time I was able to use Apple products, Android absolutely smoked them on their technical aspects. And the newest top of the line Android products were better than Apple products at the time. So in my mind, because I'm so technically oriented, I'm like, okay, I'm just going to buy the Android product. Not that I bought new smartphones, I don't do that. But the issue was that I really kind of missed out on that brand development, and I didn't really understand that it wasn't just a cult of personality. When Steve Jobs died, I thought that we would see a decline in innovation from Apple. I thought we'd see a decline in stock price, and I thought that would become less important in the U.S. market. Now, they've seen a decline in China, but that's really more because of the rise of native competition there. And they've lost some global market share, but in the U.S., their market shares remain relatively stable since then. Like I said, the brand loyalty thing is something that I find mysterious. NEO, though, is clearly developing that. My friends that I'm talking to online in China, particularly have a friend of mine who travels all over the place in the mainland. It's something that's on the lips of people all the time right now. It's on their minds. They're discussing it, and they're very proud of it. So I think that, yeah, somebody just sent me a message. Jason, you don't need scripts. You're that good. Okay. It's a lot different when I'm trying to speak into the camera and there's no one here, guys. So how about a double my money challenge? Do you invest in cannabis stocks? The answer to that is not really. I own one. And I got 400 shares of something that was spun off from something else, and I'm not really sure how I got it, but it's worth like 46 cents a share. I don't own any cannabis stocks right now, largely because I think that legalization, at least where I live right now, no one's enforcing any rules on cannabis. Like, legalization is going to radically change how things are grown. Like, I had a friend of mine who ran a grow shop where he sold lights and trays and all kinds of stuff for hydroponics. That was hydroponics. We all know what he was really doing. Anyway, he's really concerned that now that everything's illegal and you can just grow it out in the open, how is that going to change the way people are growing things? How is it going to be how is that going to change the way things are marketed? So I just don't know enough about this industry. That's something that I've never been all that interested in. I know there's opportunity there, but when I'm looking at stocks right now, what I'm seeing is a lot of heartbreak. A lot of people that got in early, they got pumped up, they jumped into things, and now yeah. So what is my opinion on buying NEO stock? Already covered that. Somebody says, I'd say Peru or Bolivia. Kent F says, tell us your ancestry. So C Author, thank you for sending me $5. Hey, what's your real look at Li Auto and EV? Does it have a real potential to get $50 in 2021? What do you think AMC will end up? AMC repurchase bankrupt? Okay, so I'm not sure who you mean by AMC, but let's talk about Li Auto. Doesn't have the potential to get to $50 in 2021. I'm telling you guys, Li Auto was probably the sleeper in the group. I would love it if they had more than one product. But if you look at the growth of that one product, it's absolutely amazing what they're doing. If you look at how range anxiety seems to be so much more of an issue in other markets than it is in the United States, and they seem to have come up with a way that sort of bridges that gap in range anxiety, just like NIO has with battery swapping. They're coming up with a strategy to sort of bridge that gap until we see the infrastructure put in place to support electric vehicles nationwide. I think that NIO definitely has the potential to get to $50 per share by the end of 2021. We see. Oh, we talked about the movie theater company. I think they're going to end up getting bought out by somebody. They have absolutely gotten smashed, crushed by this year. They're only alive because of government assistance at this point and by piling on debt. They're probably going to get bought out by somebody. I get the feeling, Frank P says, I get the feeling you're anti-SPACs. I really like them when they're near the $10. So I'm not anti-SPAC. I'm anti-enthusiasm for every SPAC, which seems to be what's happening right now. We're entering a period right now where it just seems like any IPO can't go wrong. And if you looked at that Wunong Net Technology that went from $5 a share to $155 a share in one day, and then went back down after that on no news whatsoever. They have revenues somewhere around $1.6 million in revenue for the entire year, prior year before that. Things have actually gotten kind of ridiculous when it comes to SPACs. People aren't looking at the underlying fundamentals of the business, whether or not it's actually a healthy firm, or in the case of Wunong Technology, I don't even know if it's a real firm. I can't really confirm that they're selling any products. So let me see here. See, Lee also has a higher profit margin. Lee will be profitable this year. Profitable this year? I would say no, and that's a good thing because they're going to be sinking money into researching technologies for self-driving. They're probably going to be sinking money into design of new products, which also means building out new product, which means building out new manufacturing lines for those new products. So I don't expect Lee Auto to be profitable this year. I don't expect NIO probably to be profitable for at least another 3 years. I made the prediction before, guys, that NIO is going to have to do something about manufacturing here pretty soon, especially now that we have this weird relationship where their largest competitor in China, VW, because VW has more share of auto sales than anyone else in China right now. VW also owns half of JAC, and they own 75% of the VW JAC joint venture. So right now you have this weird position where VW owns half of the production capacity for NIO. And I think that I would expect there's moves going on in the background right now for NIO to go out and build their own factory, or at least sign a partnership manufacturing agreement with someone else. Okay, let me see here. How do you do your research? What kind of degree do I have? So I actually have a degree in archaeology, anthropology with a concentration in archaeology, and I have a certified financial planner designation, Series 7, 66, 24, a bunch of other things that I'm studying for the enrolled agent exam right now. Let me see here. Too many overvalued stocks. Yeah, actually, overvalued stocks. People look a lot at price to earnings ratio right now. I'm telling you, the price to book ratio for asset classes as a whole right now is starting to get out of control. When you talk about stocks being overvalued, if you're looking at that price to book ratio, we're looking at like large cap value, large cap growth, small cap growth. You're at 5 times, you're at levels right now that are 5 times greater than the standard deviation over the last 10 to 15 years for some of these asset classes, which would suggest that either price to book value needs to come up really, really quickly, or prices are going to decline at some point. And look, I don't want to be one of those guys that's a perma bear that's always predicting, the end of the stock market or a decline at some point. All I'm saying right now is we have to see a pullback at some point, folks. Like we really, the pullback that we saw in March was driven by the coronavirus pandemic, was not driven by fundamentals. The next one we see is probably going to be driven by fundamentals of the market, which is overvaluation and the extension of credit. At some point, there's going to be a margin call by a lot of these major trading houses on a stock that's widely held enough that it's going to have a rolling trigger effect, meaning you're going to get a margin call on this stock. Let's say it's just Tesla, for example, because a lot of times if you buy Tesla on margin, it has like special rules. If it drops below a certain value, they're going to say, come up with some cash. So you're going to have to liquidate Tesla, or you're going to have to liquidate other stocks to satisfy your margin call. And that's going to cause sort of a rolling effect at that point. This is how these sort of declines get started at some point, where there's an overextension of credit, the price to book value ratios get kind of out of whack. And then, like I said, either price to book has to come up or prices have to come down. At this point right now, we're looking at levels that look a lot like the dot-com crash right now. So, but what am I doing personally about my investments in that case? Not a lot. I am pretty happy and pretty satisfied that I own a portfolio that that's really set up for the next 10 to 15 years. I'm not going to retire until my kids are out of college. And so you see, do you think Apple will merge with one of the existing automakers in China? So I did a video on that where I said that I thought that VW was probably a good candidate for a manufacturer. And like I said, it's mostly because VW owns so much production capacity in China. They're an experienced automaker. They're an experienced auto designer. They design vehicles for a lot of other companies that produce them. So in China, actually. And so I'm thinking that in that case, it might make some sense. But here's the thing, guys. Manufacturing a phone or any other electronic device, so not like manufacturing a car, it may be, and someone else pointed, this is not my idea, someone else pointed this out to me, it may make a lot more sense for them to partner with somebody here in the U.S. to deliver products here in the U.S. and partner with somebody in China to deliver products in China, kind of like the way Tesla is doing, where they want to have a factory on every continent. It reduces your delivery costs. So nowadays, everyone and their dog knows about stocks and can easily create a brokerage account. That is true. So Richard Gamino, how can someone access RSA statistics and volume charts, track the market? If you have a brokerage account, your broker dealer has those tools available to you. If they don't have those tools available to you, get another broker dealer. Okay, so let's see. That along with the Fed by using loopholes. Dub's the god that you always have interesting things to say. The Fed buying distressed assets right now, especially debt, is one of the things that's propping up the market, and it is creating absurd valuations. How absurd can they get before they're too absurd? I don't know. That's not a prediction I'm willing to make. Let me see here. Liking banks as a hedge against rising rates. That's not bad. When interest rates rise, the values of banks rise. But we're not looking at interest rates rising at least until 2023. At least that's the signaling that the Fed has given us. Let me see here. Holistic Hottie Inc. Didn't that happen before the Great Depression? What are we talking about before the Great? Sorry, I didn't see what you're commenting. Do I own treasuries? No, Mr. Negative. I do not own treasuries. So my personal portfolio, put it this way, I don't own any bonds. No bonds at all. Personally, my assets, I have real estate. I have 2 years of living expenses in cash. And I don't consider that an investment. It's just 2 years of living expenses in cash. And after this year, when all of my plans fell apart, my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy shut down by the government, my bar shut down by the government, my financial planning practice, I'm just lucky that I moved it all online a couple of years ago and was able to kind of smoothly transition to that. That income wasn't affected, but half my income went away middle of the year. Still hasn't come back because California is still basically, my Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu Academy has not been allowed to open since March. Based on the rules, we haven't really been allowed to be open. I've been doing private lessons with people, but that's really about it. And my bar has been shut down. We elected, and people told us we were crazy when we did this, but when I bought into that bar, we elected to keep it shut down for the next year because we knew that we could depend on our population screwing up the response to the coronavirus. We planned on it basically from April when we started this whole thing, and then the bar was shut down. We planned on being shut down for an entire year, and we looked at the history of pandemics. We saw that pretty much historically, no matter what a society does for a pandemic, the effects last for about 1.5 years, for 18 months. We made that plan. So we shut it down. We negotiated with our landlord, got some reduced rent, went to the EID, went to the SBA, took out the EIDL loan. We sat on it. We're making some improvements. We're doing all the work ourselves. We're waiting till the time is opportune to open back up. We could have opened back up in September, October, but we decided not to do that. And now, of course, in California, bars are shut down again. So so I'm prepared for a disaster now. My paranoia was basically all proven to be useful. So I don't know. That's something I may never get over. But I don't own treasuries primarily because of this. Interest rates have done essentially nothing but decline since 1994. Yields on your yield on your portfolio as a whole has done nothing but decline since then, and total returns have basically done nothing but decline since then too. So I am 2 years of living expenses in cash, real estate assets that produce income, several different businesses, and the rest of my portfolio is 100% stocks. Okay, so let's move on. The big ring. Will Israel Adesanya kick Jan's ass for the title? The answer to that is yes. He's just his Adesanya's ground game, even though he's just a purple belt in jiu-jitsu, his ground game is actually pretty good. He's hard to take down. His stand-up is excellent. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's MMA. So let's see. How about the Chinese yuan versus the USD? The USD is going to, or the US dollar is going to be devalued a lot. Yes, it is. So here's the thing. There's not a correlation between the amount of debt and inflation when it comes to the US dollar. And I know people say that I'm crazy, but go back and look at the charts starting in the 1970s, the increase in debt, track it along with inflation, and there's not a correlation between the two. I know there is with other countries. There isn't because the US is a reserve currency, but also because other countries manipulate their currency to keep their currency kind of at the same level, with parity with the US dollar, so that when they don't want imports from their country to become very, very expensive and our exports to them to become very, very cheap. So they manipulate their currency as well as we do. So China will devalue if the US dollar gets too high. That's exactly, Mr. Negative. That's correct. So pretty boy Kelsey, Bitcoin will dump a little if the market has a massive crash, but retail institutions are buying the dips faster than Usain Bolt on the 200 meter. Okay. So I'm not going to comment on that. Sounds perfectly reasonable. Let me see. Alchemist. With George today, will it affect the markets tomorrow? It will have no effect on the markets. He's not going to be president in 19 days. There's little damage left that he can do to markets. It's really up to the new Congress is the real threat to markets, guys. It's not necessarily who's the president. Anyway, I said I'm not going to get into politics. Here we go. So yes, I have heard about the new bio-nanotechnology. It's not really all that new. They're looking at cytogenetics. Right now, it's an extremely disjointed process. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money to do things. They're looking at streamlining that process and using making things digital. It's not necessarily very new. It's been out for a while. It's just that papers are just finally getting published on this, and it's attracting attention. Is it? I mean, I wouldn't jump in at this level right now after it's gone up like 380% in the last couple of days. I wouldn't do that. I want to do more research though before I have like a final say. And if you guys watch my channel, you know I don't like to give price recommendations on there. I don't think that they're all that useful. What is my take on Palantir? So if you saw my video on Palantir, I made the point that a lot of people don't really understand what Palantir does. And I think that if you watch the second video that I did on Palantir, you'd understand what Palantir does now. It forms these connections and allows you to see these connections between data sets really easily in a visual way. It allows you to query your databases using natural language rather than having to write your own procedures and that sort of thing. There are a lot of companies that do the same thing. I think that Palantir has benefited from the Peter Thiel mistake to a degree. And it's benefited from some of the rumored successes in the intelligence world, which I couldn't confirm or deny if those actually happened. But it was rumored that Palantir was involved in finding Osama bin Laden. It's rumored that Palantir was involved in finding someone just recently. I can't remember that person's name. But anyway, so I think they benefited a little bit. But there's, Aterix is doing some of this. IBM has a division that does this. There are a number of different companies that are doing some of this stuff. So is ARK-K overvalued? I don't know. I mean, the answer would really be, are the stocks inside of ARK-K overvalued? The value of ARK-K, while it's not a perfect reflection, the difference between the premium or a discount on the funds is never all that great. Let me see here. Thoughts on Bitcoin versus stocks? I don't see Bitcoin versus stock. Bitcoin stock versus directly in Bitcoin. Honestly, Bob, not something that I thought about. My interest in Bitcoin right now is using it as a hedge, and I would actually rather own Bitcoin itself, somewhere around 2% of my portfolio, as a hedge. Do you think going long copper is a good play with upcoming EV revolution? Yeah, not a bad play. Not a bad play. Do I have an opinion on Lordstown Motors? Yeah, I do have an opinion on Lordstown Motors. And that's another video that I'm working on right now. I'm not convinced yet. Peter Thiel is a very smart guy. I trust him. Yeah, but he's a very smart guy. But he's not always right either. And I can't think of him off the top of my head right now. But he's invested in a couple of things that absolutely bombed. Just like Warren Buffett has too. He doesn't call every single stock correctly or every single company correctly. How do you do your research on your stocks? Guys, I do work as a financial planner, so I do have access to financial planning tools, and so I can do data modeling and things like that. But the one of the reasons I'm kind of starting my own Patreon right now is to fund my access to all of the premium news sources that I want. Like, I want subscriptions to every premium news source that's out there, and so I'm gonna, when you guys go on to Patreon, and I'll put that in the description, and I put that on my video today. But there's just gonna be two levels. One of them is gonna be what I call the Brew Club, where it's $5 a month. It's to support my access to premium news sources, so I can continue to bring you guys good stuff. And then once a month, we're gonna get together for a live stream and a beer, and we're gonna talk stocks and the economy. And you guys, I'm gonna also allow you guys in that meeting to propose different ideas for videos. I'm going to allow someone to come on and kind of make a case for that if they really want me to cover something. That'd be great. So, new floor for NEO after NEO Day. I'd say that after NEO Day, I think that the current price right now, I'd say that the new floor is probably going to be around $42 a share. I don't think it'll ever drop below that again. 42 to 45 a share. Please tell us more about your online financial planning. So, Ken, right now I'm registered through Client First Capital, and Amar Shaw, the guy that I brought on to talk about taxes a few weeks ago, he's been a friend of mine for a decade. He finally convinced me to register with his firm rather than registering my own, saving me about $70,000 a year in compliance costs. So why not? But if you email me at jason@advisedge.com, I can give you my work email from there. I'm not allowed to disclose it on YouTube. Actual financial planners are under a lot of restrictions. And people who give financial advice for a living, there's a lot that we can't say on a YouTube channel. So I was going through and looking at other people's Patreons to see what they're doing, and I saw a couple of people that for a certain level, for $100 a month, you get in like an individual one-on-one coaching session with them. Like, guys, that's delivering financial advice, and if you're not registered with a firm, that is absolutely against SEC regulations, and you are going to get busted. So if you're interested, email me at jason@advisedge.com. At the end of all of my videos, my email address is always on there. So let me see here. Xpeng will grow with NEO. I kind of agree with that. I do think that you may actually see Xpeng. It depends on what the sedan looks like that NEO is coming out with and kind of what the target is. But just because the market that Xpeng is targeting, that slightly down market, slightly less money market, is much larger than the market that NEO is targeting right now. if you look at the fact that all of the early work to create a market for EVs was really done by Tesla and by the CCP. They've created this market, but it basically there's a small market up here, it widens out, and it gets smaller again at the bottom, and not as small as a premium market at the very bottom. But the market that Xpeng is going after is much larger than the market that NIO is, and we could see, because of the volume of vehicles that they're selling, that their margins increase faster. Plus, they own their own factories, so the margins are going to increase faster because of that. But we could see them actually pass up NIO, and the fact that they're not quite as diluted as NIO is right now. So, how do I feel about NIO's December deliveries? Awesome. We covered that a little bit earlier. So, Mr. Negative, do I use options? Actually, most financial advisors are actually prevented from using from shorting stocks. We're prevented from day trading, and we're prevented from using certain types of options. Like, I can sell covered calls, but if I were going to create an option collar around a stock that I own and not do it for my clients, that creates kind of a conflict of interest, especially since they could be the one buying that stock or something. And I may even have my own reasons, but it creates a conflict of interest. So most of the times, if you're working as a professional financial advisor, you aren't allowed to do these things without prior approval. Let's see. GAN software as a service. I haven't taken a look at that yet. So, Baba, do you think it will recover above 247? Should I hold on or dump? So I'm not going to make a recommendation to buy or sell a security on a live feed, but I will tell you one thing. I think that Alibaba's troubles are temporary. They're slapping Jack Ma down, putting him in his place, and they will let them do business as usual. There's going to be a few regulatory changes, but I think that the company will be just fine. So SEC stands for Elon. Okay. XPEV is going to the moon. Or any thoughts on Plug? Do you mean Plug Power? Yeah, I think I covered Plug. Like I said, I covered Plug in a video. I used to be extremely excited about a hydrogen economy. The math works out well for hydrogen economy. The problem is, I think they missed their moment. The moment for that to develop that would have been in the 1970s during the oil crisis. A hydrogen economy makes more sense than an oil economy does. It really does. Not that we can completely get away from oil, but using a hydrogen economy for energy, using clean energy generation from solar would make a lot of sense in the long run. The moment for that has passed to some degree, particularly when you look at wheel-to-well efficiency for a hydrogen vehicle, the best you're going to get out of it is about 25%. When you look at that wheel-to-well efficiency for an electric vehicle, an all-electric vehicle, it's more like 70 to 90%. Not that efficiency matters, because a gasoline vehicle is maybe 15 to 20% at best efficient over the entire cycle. So I think that it's kind of missed their moment. And Plug Power right now, everyone keeps saying, "Oh, you're looking at their forklifts that they make, and there's other things that they make." And the problem is, this isn't a new technology. And I looked at their website and the comparisons they make to battery electric vehicles, and they're making comparisons to lead acid battery electric vehicles and lead acid battery electric forklifts and that sort of thing. And those comparisons really aren't fair anymore. Battery technology has improved a lot since they first started making their claims. Secondly, they're not really a new company. Their leadership is old, and they're even older than and I hate to say this, like, the dynamic leadership that you're going to see in companies isn't going to come from people of that generation anymore. They're not going to, and it sounds very ageist, or it sounds like ageism when I say that. But in particularly when I look at their management, I don't see that they have compelling ideas. It's the same ideas that they had back 20 years ago when they started the company. So natural gas will be a backup for solar. What is my genomic strategy? My genomic strategy is RG. It's literally just because I just don't have time to be an expert in everything that I'd like to be an expert in. Trust me, I get lost in reading about things. I get lost in examining things, and if I pursued every interest that I had, I would have no life other than the interests that I have. And I do have a family. I do have business that I have to take care of, that sort of thing. So. Thoughts on Redfin and RKT? Redfin, I assume that you mean the real estate company. I think Redfin and Open Door and Zillow are going to completely disrupt the way we do real estate transactions now. That's inevitable, and I think that in large part, DocuSign is going to be a huge part of that, especially when it comes to the storage of documents. And I don't know if you guys have owned a lot of real estate or done a lot of real estate transactions or know a lot of realtors. I find the entire process of dealing with property to be enormously painful and frustrating, especially the last time that I bought a primary residence. It was like somebody climbed up inside me with a flashlight. It was really not a pleasant experience. And I had to provide the same documents like half a dozen times because the process was so analog. Long to get through it. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous. All the problems with my last property, the closing took almost 5 months, and I almost gave up a half a dozen times on it. But it's the place we live in now. My wife is very happy with it. I'm pretty happy with it too. Let me see here. What do you think about Fastly long-term? Stock that I have not looked at this point, so I'll just be perfectly honest about that. What do you think about solar? 360 mPower. What do you think of solar? So I'm 100% on solar, so I like it as a product. I also have the Powerwall set up too, even though it's not really necessary with net metering here. I had the extra money to do it, so I did it at the time. We are a low energy use household, so the 14 panels we have provide like 135% of our needs right now. I do not own an electric car, and I know that's surprising considering my interest in them. But here's the way I am. I'm a late adopter of technology and an early investor. I went out, I needed a new car a year ago, went out and bought a $5,000 used Ford Escape Hybrid. And I'll drive that until it dies. And then when that happens, then I'll probably end up buying a Tesla. But I had the opportunity to buy a Tesla a few years ago. I walked in, I walked to my friend's house, took a look at it, drove it around. It was great. I thought it was an absolutely fantastic product. It was when the Model 3 first came out. Absolutely amazing to be in. I did notice a few things I don't like about it, like it doesn't have quite the fit and finish of a top level German car. It's not there yet. It will, but anyone who wants a Tesla, anyone who's into Tesla, is pretty forgiving about these little tiny errors that other auto enthusiasts aren't, right? But I went home and I said, this is such a great idea that I'm going to take the $45,000 I was going to spend on the Tesla. I'm going to buy Tesla stock. So that's pretty much what I do with everything. So I'm not an early adopter of technologies. I'm an early investor in those technologies. Okay, let me see here. How do you think solid state batteries will affect nickel demand in the medium and long term? Okay, so in the medium term, I don't think it's going to affect it at all because those aren't going to be online for quite some time. Toyota's battery technology, which they haven't really revealed in detail, they haven't revealed the chemistry in detail yet. I don't know how it's going to do that. But I think we're looking at nickel going away from cathode chemistry anyway, especially if you look at the lithium ferrophosphate batteries that are being used right now and produced in China-made Model 3s. And we're looking at BYD as being one of the largest producers of those. The problem with cobalt, the problem with nickel, isn't that the supply is really all that limited. It's not. Cobalt's not rare. It just occurs in countries that are politically problematic. And nickel as well is a supply constraint to some degree because of that as well. The iron, they said that lithium, iron, and phosphate are not limited at all. Like lithium occurs in a lot of places, it's just not heavily concentrated. Let me see here. Mr. Negative, let rich people buy new cars. That's true. I have never bought a new car. Never. I am 46 years old. I've never owned a new car. And let me see here. So what about the graphite in the current anode design? Will that go away? I don't think so at this point. Yeah. So with the solid state batteries, that's one of the things they're saying is going to go away. And I don't quite understand the way that chemistry works at this point right now. I really need to look at that. But supposedly there's going to be no graphite in the chemistry for the solid state batteries. But like I said, I don't understand that chemistry yet. I'll look into that. Where does BYD go from here? BYD is going to continue to grow. their auto production is going to continue to grow. They're going to continue to be ignored. They're just not exciting for some reason, even though the BYD Han is probably a better vehicle than Xpeng's vehicle, and for a couple of different reasons. From what I understand, the finish of the vehicle is just a lot better than Xpeng's is right now. And I haven't actually been inside both of those vehicles to compare myself. I've never been inside of an Xpeng. So, are you still holding on to NIO? Yes. Between mid November and December, I liquidated about 30% of my NIO holding, and I kept the other 70% just because it had grown so much that it was 16, 17% of my net worth. And I never intended for it to be that much. I bought thousands of shares at sub $5 for the most part, and it grew so much that it made me uncomfortable. And then when I diversified that, some of that went into Xpeng, and then that grew too. So I have this problem right now where I'm way overbalanced in EV stocks right now. I will be trimming some of that, not because I don't believe in the future of EV. It's just I own, and some of that's actually going to go into genomic stocks, by the way. It's going to go into ARKG. What do I think about Lucid Motors? Well, I think it's a great story. I want to see when they produce a vehicle. Does it have the potential to compete with Tesla in the U.S. market? I want to see a vehicle first, and I want to see if they can produce things at volume. Is Xpeng a good stock to hold on to your first quarter? Yes, I do think it's a good stock. I don't really think in terms of quarter by quarter. I do look at quarter by quarter numbers for stock. I don't really think in terms of that. For me, I bought Xpeng in beginning in I think in October, and then bought more of it in November, between November and December. I do, like I said, I'm holding on to it for several years. So Redwood Materials is what I'm waiting on. I don't know anything about that. SBE ChargePoint stock, it will drop after the merge by Davi Singh. So you guys maybe saw my video on ChargePoint first, and then I talked about blank and all this. And look, here's my issue with all of these stocks. They don't have any special technology. They don't have any. There's no proprietary IP out there. There's nothing special to do. It's basically a plug. It's a fancy plug. Don't get me wrong. But here's the issue with the industry. It doesn't matter that ChargePoint has 70% of market share right now, which is a number that I don't believe, by the way, especially when I looked at especially when I looked at sort of where their stations are located and how they're all connected together. But the barrier to entry is so low the technological barrier to entry is so low with these devices, and they make money off of selling the plugs to you, not by charging you to charge a vehicle. They make most of their money off of the hardware. The barrier to entry of that is so low. You're going to have 1,000 players in this field in the next couple of years. And you look at what Ford is doing right now, where they're tying together all of these networks and allowing you to access it through, either through an app on your phone, or what Tesla is doing, where you have the RFID. You pull up, it automatically identifies what type of car you have, who it's owned by, and charges you. You don't do anything. That's where that money is going to be made, in that creation of that network. So the company that wins that network is going to win that space in the charging wars. But when it comes to providing hardware, every electrical component producer on the planet is going to get into this business in the next 10, 15 years. And so like I said, the barrier to entry in that is just so low that I don't see that there's any way that Switchback Energy, ChargePoint is going to be able to protect the market lead that they have right now. It's going to get eaten up by a lot of other people. What is your opinion on LiDAR and full self-driving? Will LiDAR be widely used in autonomous driving? I am not sure that a system using LiDAR is ever really going to reach the level of full self-driving. I'm really not sure of that. I listen to Elon Musk's arguments on this, and look, I don't want to say that I don't want to be convinced by everything the man says, right? He's going to be wrong at some point too, and he's pretty stubborn. But he makes some pretty critical points about LiDAR and how it works. And for example, LiDAR is not going to be able to detect the difference between a plastic bag blowing across the road, a tumbleweed blowing across the road, and a boulder going across the road. It's not necessarily going to be able to detect those differences like image processing can. And I don't know if that's something that could be solved in the future or not. It might be. So who knows? Can you touch on why CRISPR is trading so high? Hysteria. That's why it's trading so high right now. So how do you think the Roth election is going to impact the market this week? I don't think it's going to impact the market. So historically, when you look at what any elections have actually done in the market, there is not usually on the day after the election, there's some sort of effect on the market. 6 months beyond the election, you can't tell that there was ever an effect on the market. And that's one of the big myths and mysteries that keeps persisting about investing in the stock market, is that elections have so much of an effect on it, and they really don't. So are you for a holding group for everything Elon? Not necessarily. I'm really not. And it ties the companies a little bit too closely together. And I think they might work better independently. Let me see here. So I guess it's time to test my balance. Tesla's already in testing LiDAR. Elon caved. Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Let's see, Beam Global. So why invest in Chinese EV stocks when Tesla is dominating the market and will keep dominating? Okay, so we should talk about some of the threats to Tesla right now. Here's the biggest threat to Tesla right now. It's the legacy automakers, and here's why. They can lose money for years on electric vehicles and make it up with what they're selling in internal combustion engine vehicles until they have the technology and they have the manufacturing capability to do things. They've been manufacturing cars for a long time. An electric vehicle without the software is a lot easier to make than an internal combustion engine. There's just a lot fewer parts. They're better at making panels fit. They're better at creating certain types of efficiencies. They have relationships with labor as well. And that's one of the things that's starting to change with Teslas, are having issues with labor at this point. So they are still a threat, even though I know people say they're not going to get caught. They can also poach the labor. They have the money to poach labor from Tesla at some point. So they're still a threat to some degree. Do I think that Tesla, they're not going to put Tesla out of business. Tesla's going to be a company that's going to be making 2 to 3 million cars probably in the next 5 years per year. And I think 20 million cars in the next decade or so. So yeah, remember that Tesla's real value is their data, not their cars. That's true. They have the highest resolution for autonomous driving data. I don't think that's going to last. I think that data at some point is going to make it to the market, meaning that the ability to circumvent patents and the ability to steal data or for data to find its way onto the open market through nefarious means has never been greater than it is today. I think that that's one of the signals that Tesla was giving us on Battery Day, is that their technological advantage is not going to last forever. That is simply one of the signals that I think Elon was giving us. But I do think that, at least in the United States, they're creating that sort of brand mystique and loyalty that Apple had, and that's going to carry them for a long way. And I think that his vision of creating a sustainable energy future and an electric vehicle future is going to come true, even if they're not the biggest producer in the world. I hope they will be. I mean, I own plenty of Tesla stock, but I have to be realistic. They still have challenges. What do I think of? Any thoughts on Danimer Scientific Biodegradable? I don't have any thoughts on that. I'm sorry. How long will it take for US or EU market to reach 50% electric vehicle market share, roughly? You know, I was doing some of my own projections on this. I don't think the U.S. is going to reach that until roughly 2035 or so. I think that Europe will reach that sometime before 2030, that at least half of their vehicles on the road will be electric vehicles. So California here, they passed a law saying essentially that all vehicles sold after 2035, new vehicles sold after 2035 would have to be something other than internal combustion engines. I think that law is completely unnecessary. And that these vehicles, it will be hard to find an internal combustion engine for sale, for a car for sale like that in 2035, because of one simple reason, and that's profit margins. Tesla has demonstrated that you can make electric vehicles with profit margins that are a lot higher than an internal combustion engine, particularly when you include software in that package, and you're getting software margins on that software that you're selling. I think it's going to be very difficult to find an internal combustion engine car by the year 2035 in the US. And the law was completely unnecessary to pass. Market forces and good old-fashioned capitalism are going to be what causes this. So Elon hyped his company with his little save the world narrative. Yeah, he did. And like I said, he only survived by continually going back and hitting up capital markets. It was secondary sales of stock, but a lot of actually was convertible bonds as well. That was a huge way that he raised money. And of course, it was the $2.1 billion in grants and subsidies from the state of California that helped him along too. And I'm still a little bitter about him moving his operations to Texas. I'm actually originally from Texas, guys. Gives advantage to saving U.S. companies from failure. Mr. Negative, the U.S. also gives advantage to the U.S. and saving U.S. companies from failure. To a degree, that's true. Is there an ideal number of different securities and stocks you would hold in a portfolio of 25 to 30K invested? So Olivia, I think it was you that sent me a very nice email on my anniversary of doing YouTube, and I wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you. It was very heartfelt, and I really enjoyed reading that. And I know my response wasn't very long. To be honest with you, I'm not really comfortable with praise. It kind of it freaks me out a little bit, but I wanted to say thank you very much for that. There isn't an ideal number of different securities and stocks that you can hold. If you ever read, I think it was Benjamin Graham's Modern Portfolio Theory, it's an exceptionally obtuse book that was written in the 1990s. It's not really all that modern anymore. But the advice when it comes to portfolio construction really hasn't changed that much since then. He states that you can have a perfectly diversified portfolio across asset types, asset classes, size, and all that with about 15 stocks. I don't know that that's actually true today. You probably need a few more because there's a few more asset classes. And there's, of course, the new way of looking at stocks now by investing by rights law rather than, rather than by fundamental analysis. It's a little more complicated than that, guys. Sorry. But so anywhere between 15 and 20 stocks would probably be okay in that thing. You don't need to have, and he was really talking about a period where you needed to have even lots of 100 to even buy anything. You don't have to do that today. You can buy one share of something, 100 shares of something. You can buy a fractional share of something. So when do you approximately expect that rebalance in the market? Lots of IPOs and SPACs came scheduled in 2021. A lot of companies have more debt than income. Yeah, that would be hard to say. You guys know who Ray Dalio is? Ray Dalio is the perma bear. It's all he ever does is predict that the sky is falling and the market is going to crash. And of course, in 2020, he looks like a genius again because he made $20 billion when the market finally did crash, and then his fund has done quite well for the year. But I do listen to what he has to say. I just don't always take it seriously because, seriously, the guy is just so negative. But I would say that despite the fact that we have a lot of consumer optimism, and despite the fact that we have people forward-looking right now, we're looking towards the end of the pandemic. We're looking towards the end of economic disruption. The end of economic disruption for a lot of businesses isn't going to change their fundamentals, and we're going to see that reckoning that at some point. So, do you think that GM or Ford will survive the EV wave? Here's the thing: I predicted that one of those companies is probably going to go out of business, and I think that company is probably going to be Ford. And if Ford were able to beat Tesla to the market with an all-electric F-150, which is the best-selling vehicle in the United States, I think they would have a chance of surviving, but they have so much debt. Their stock price is so low that they can't really do a secondary offering that makes sense. Their bond status right now, if it's not junk, it should be junk. I don't think that they're going to survive. I don't think they're going to be able to pivot fast enough. GM, let's remember, is actually a new company. It is not the old GM. It was completely restructured in 2009. Both bondholders and stockholders in the old company got completely screwed out of their money. But it's essentially a clean slate in terms of its financial history. They have a little bit more room there to hit up capital markets and raise money and make that change. So I think that Ford is probably the company that's under a bigger threat. They'll end up going into bankruptcy court, reemerging, and coming out as something new. It'll still be called Ford, but it'll be the last company from that era Like if you look at the 1,600 auto companies that were created between 1900 and 1940, only one of those thrives today, and that's Ford. They're going to fail sometime in the next couple of years, I think so. And Mr. Negative, that's the Cybertruck will bankrupt Ford. I think it will. I think it will. And especially if the Cybertruck doesn't look like the Cybertruck. Let's face it, that thing's ugly. But if I buy a new car, it's going to be the Cybertruck. And for a couple of different reasons. Number one, I like it because it's ugly. Number two, I know that a lot of people where I grew up in Texas are not going to drive it just because it doesn't look like a truck. I think they're going to, the Rivian, which basically looks like the F-150, is probably going to do fairly well. Let me see here. Ford is the only car company to survive every market recession in history. That won't change. No, I think it's going to change. The difference is the debt load this time. That's the real big difference. And the fact that they can't go to capital markets anymore. No one wants to loan them any money. Only Ford buy is the Ford Shelby GT350. Yeah, that's a beautiful. There you go. The Cybertruck looks super weird. Yes, it does. I'm going to scroll back here to see if I know I missed a lot of questions, guys. I'm sorry. You joined. Oh, Ken Hamill says, I just joined your Patreon. You might be the first one who joined. I don't know. So look, guys, when it comes to Patreon stuff, be a little patient with me. I have no idea what I'm doing. I set up a Discord server too. I'm going to try not to regulate the Discord server too much, but let's not do personal conflicts like I see on other Discord servers. Let's stick to facts. When you get challenged because you make an assertion, back it up with fact, or at least just admit that you can't back it up and it's just a feeling. There's nothing wrong with that, with having feelings, as long as you admit it's just a feeling. So the announcement of what I'm going to do that I think that maybe no one else is doing on YouTube right now is I have $20,000 of my own money in a WEBULL account. And if you look on my Patreon, there's two levels of support. One's the $5 a month support, where I'm going to get together with you guys every once in a while, have a beer. We're going to have, a live stream talk. You're going to have access to my Discord server. You're going to have access to some of my personal notes. But the other level is limited to only 15 people. I'm going to let those 15 people manage that $20,000. Because here's the thing. I don't think that a committee of 15 people that are interested in stocks who are regular people, I don't think you will do a worse job than a professional money manager. And I think research backs me up. I think that we can compare against regular indexes. We can compare against some of the best mutual funds and ETFs out there. And I think that a committee of 15 people managing that fund will do just as well. And Mel, Nag, why so handsome? Like I said, I'm not really comfortable with compliments, guys. So, but thank you. Yeah. Okay. WEBULL hijacks your money. Okay. All right. I just chose that one because it seemed like everyone else is choosing that right now. But the other thing is this affiliate link, of course, and all the people that sign up through that, the stocks are going to go into that account. They're not going to go into, well, I mean, it's my money, but I think it's going to go into that account. So the portfolio managers are going to be able to manage that as well. They can either keep the stocks or sell the stocks. All the money that you guys pay and the Patreon fees, that's going to go into that account as well. So essentially, you guys are going to be managing a portion of my retirement funds, and I'll be there to observe. I'm not going to have any voting power. You are going to have the ability to take out, you're going to have the ability to use margin in that account as well. You won't have the ability to do short selling or use options because I'm prevented from doing that by regulation. So how do you get a lot of information on Chinese EV companies? Do you travel to China often? Do you have business in China? I don't travel to China often. I have a lot of business associates in China that I'm in contact with. And a lot of times they will translate documents for them and send them to me just because they know that I'm interested. These are people that I've known since I lived overseas, 25, 30 years ago. Let me see here. Yeah, WEBULL does take 5 days to deposit and sell funds. And TD Ameritrade is the best. I have TD Ameritrade, and I work on the back end of both Fidelity and Schwab. I can tell you, man, I'm not a huge fan of Schwab. Fidelity, on the other hand, is great, and TD is great. You see, I keep on buying stocks from FANG to EV to oil, travel, penny stocks. And I hear from YouTube and many others that up to 45, over 45. It's okay with adding more. There's no limit on how many stocks you can have in a portfolio and make it properly diversified. Proper diversification, though, really means across asset class, across industry. And there are a number, it's worth it to sign up to something like Morningstar for a couple of months to run a test on your portfolio, to see how much correlation you have in your portfolio, to see how much overlap you have in your portfolio. And when I say overlap, meaning how many companies that you own are actually doing the same thing. So you're maybe a lot less diversified than you think. So any financial planner like myself can do this, or you can sign up for a Morningstar account for 6 months or something. So you think environmental SPACs will have a good 2021? Energy storage. I think energy storage is about to become a whole new thing. If you weren't paying attention, I think it was in March of this year, and there was a lot to pay attention to. Tesla built this giant solar farm and battery storage unit out. So I think maybe in Queensland, Australia. There was one day where there was a whole work day where the entire state or province or whatever they call it in Australia was entirely powered by solar power. In fact, the power that they generated from their gas power generation was actually exported to another province. But they had all the power they needed for an entire 8-hour day using the solar panels and power management from the backup system, the battery farm, to do everything. I really think that at some point, Tesla's energy generation business, even though I've said solar is boring because it's kind of boring, I really do think that at some point this is going to become a much larger business than it is today, and it's going to be very, very important. So Saudi Arabia announced a big oil deal with China today. Do you think this will affect oil ETFs like USO? I don't think it's going to have a giant effect on that. I really don't. China's long-term plan is not to be dependent on oil. They don't have it. They don't really have a way of getting it without behaving in a manner, in a manner that other countries with colonial aspirations that I don't want to offend anyone, so I'm not going to mention on this channel. But basically, unless they want to behave like the West does, they can't really secure oil supplies. So this is the reason why they're making this big push towards alternative energy and towards battery electric vehicles. You see here. What? Your taxes. Can you present your projections for Open Door and how they might perform in the near future? How do you handle a loss when it comes to a stock, or more about your risk management? Okay, so this is something I told you guys that my holding period on a stock theoretically is forever. So here's when I sell a stock. I sell a stock when I think that the market or the future has changed fundamentally so much that the company is not going to be able to make it, or it's not going to be able to perform. Meaning that I'm trying to think of a great example here. God, I just can't think of this off the top of my head right now. Oh, well, the best example, of course, is Polaroid. Polaroid looked like a great investment still looked like a great investment in 1990, right? By 1995, digital cameras were out, but they were extremely clunky. They didn't work all that well. You could only store like 3 pictures on your camera, and Polaroid, Kodak, whatever, all these other analog camera companies looked great. By the time the year 2000 rolled around, professional photographers still did not use digital cameras. They used film. They were still very much anti-digital. And but at that point, the writing was on the wall. The investment was over. And I feel that way with a lot of things in the oil industry. Like, I think it would be really, so I'll let you guys on a little secret here. I own a small share of a smog company for almost a decade and a half. It seems like it's a recession-proof business in California. Got to get your car smogged. Got to go in there, get it smogged. It's a pandemic-proof business as well. You have to get your car smogged. So I sold my share in that back in October, and the main owner of the place thought that I was crazy. He gave me a really good deal, and of course, his business didn't suffer at all. He's doing great. His business is doing great. But he asked me why after the deal was concluded. I'm like, well, I think we've reached peak smog. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you're not going to do more smog tests now than ever than you are right now. Right now, you hit the top number of smog tests that you're ever going to do, and from here on out, it's simply going to decline. And so that's kind of when I'm looking at selling a stock, when I see nothing but industry decline in that kind of forever and ever and ever. Okay, and so that's really when I sell a stock. But man, if you look at when I initially bought Tesla in 2011, and then I made my second purchase, I think in 2015, that 2015 purchase, I was down on Tesla for more than 2 years, right? And there were a couple of times the stock just got absolutely crushed. But when I'm looking at the future, how it looked like there was eventually going to be an adoption of technology, this economy that we have based on oil come in at some point, or come to an end at some point, that's the reason I held on to that. It may be at some point there's some other technology arises that makes battery electric vehicles no longer part of our future. I don't know. I have no conception of what that might be, but it could happen at some point. And I don't think it's going to be the sort of solid state battery technology. When based on what I saw about the chemistry, it looked like there were a couple of other possibilities also out there, and there's also sodium ion batteries that are the research is being done on that as well. So I don't think that that's going to be a threat to Tesla's dominance. To that degree, I think that there could be kind of a knockoff technology developed here. So Halo Hat says, you're Aztec, Central American? No, not a bad guess. I speak passable Spanish, but not great Spanish. I mean, although I live 8 miles from the border, there's really no excuse for me not speaking better Spanish. Tomorrow is BNGO Day. If I buy a new car, it's because I'm a millionaire, it says Rich. That's true. So yes, robotics, please. Thoughts on ABB and Boston Dynamics. So I like Boston Dynamics. I don't have a ton of great reasons to like Boston Dynamics. My research on them has been really surface so far. That's something I'll take a look at. But there's a lot of smaller players in that field that I like a lot more. And if you look at Cathy Wood's portfolio too, the ARC-Q, that's dominated by Teslas. I don't own ARC-Q mostly because I don't want to have that much overlap in my portfolios. So I want to look at something else probably that's not her portfolio, just because I already own so many of those other stocks in something else. So and Nader Sarabi, thank you very much for your compliment. That was great. So and Neo on the uptrend. Yes, Neo is going to be on the uptrend. Thoughts on up there as well. I think it's yeah. So thoughts on Jack Ma and Ant Group crackdown coming directly from the top. Yeah, that obviously came directly from the top, and it's because of his popularity. I don't know if you guys knew this. The guy's so popular that he actually starred in an action movie as some like kung fu hero or something. I saw the clips on YouTube and I'm like, is that Jack Ma? And it wasn't just one scene. It was scene after scene of him like, kung fuing people to death. So yeah, I think that the CCP is just worried about his folk hero like popularity, and they're kind of smacking him down a bit. So let's see, why don't you day trade? I used to do it for kicks. I still do it, but the thrill is gone. Ken, 2 reasons. Number one, I'm prevented from doing that by regulations and compliance for my work. But number 2, mathematically over time, you will not. The short-term investor almost always underperforms the buy and hold investor, and part of that is just every time you make that transaction, you increase the chances that you guess wrong or the other person wins on that transaction. And the more times you do it, the more taxable transactions you create and that sort of thing, and the more chances you have to lose. If you're making great choices to begin with, and if you're making great choices to begin with, then the longer term investing is probably going to be the better way to go. Hyliion. My opinion on Hyliion is changing. I was enormously really, really positive about their stock, largely because I misinterpreted something that the founder said. And I felt let's put it this way: it's not a Nikola. They have an actual product, but their product is not as widely used as we were led to believe. And the criticism that came out with that Bonitas research were completely unfounded. But I would like to see them come up with I want to see their prototype for their Hypertruck ERX. I would like to see better numbers on how efficient their hybrid system really is. And I want to see production numbers and sales numbers improve. But do they have a future? If they can come up with if they can actually get the Hypertruck ERX produced, I think they do have a future. I think that there's going to be room for an extended range electric vehicle when it comes to long haul trucking. They're looking at a place like trucking in Canada, something like that, where you aren't going to be able to create the infrastructure up there to recharge your batteries all the time in these, or really remote places in the United States where you need more than 300, 400 miles of range. I think that there's going to be room for an extended range electric semi at some point for two different reasons. One of the reasons is like I said, just that range issue. But the other reason is weight issue. A couple of people have made this point that a lot of what we haul here in the U.S. is high bulk, but not necessarily high weight. And we have this 80,000 pound limit for vehicles here. So every pound that you have in battery reduces the amount of pound you can take in payload, right? It doesn't always make a difference, but I think there's going to be people that do this balancing out calculation in their head and say, what's going to be more cost efficient in the long run? Can I take heavier loads because I have this extended range electric vehicle that has a generator backup on it? I don't know that it's actually going to be more efficient. You're going to get more power or anything like that. But anyway, I think there's going to be room for ideas that are different in this space. I think the cars pretty much, though, are going to be 100% electric in 15, 20 years. Should I hire my financial advisor? Is $1,400 fair? Well, it depends on what your financial advisor is doing. I can tell you that I charge a lot more than that. Yeah. So my live chat is great. 50,000 subs by summer. Well, thank you. Yeah. Thoughts on QuantumScape's insane valuation? We covered this a little bit earlier. I'm not getting into it at these prices, and it's a pre-revenue company. You see here, too shady for me. Do you shop for any real estate in the future? Okay, so here's the thing with real estate. I don't like being a landlord. I'm at the point right now where all my properties are actually filled up with really great people. And that's not what I have a complaint about. It's when they're not filled up with great people and you end up losing money because some jerk decided to destroy your property for fun. Or my favorite one is with one of my clients where he owned a house. It was rented out to someone who seemed like they were a great person. When they moved out, their house was just completely destroyed, and the guy pretended like, oh, it was like that when I moved in. That's happened to me like on a number of occasions too, where tenants just destroy the place, and then these people had figured out a way to stay as long as they could for free in a place before I was able to evict them. And I don't like it even if they don't pay. It just hurts me to do that. So one of the things that's happening right now, though, is there's this huge delta between the real estate market right now and residential REITs. Residential REITs are still about 10, 15% off of their pre-pandemic highs, even though people still need to live in apartments. It's an asset class that's really ignored right now, and I see that there's an opportunity in. Not only that, when you're looking at total return in your residential REITs, you're looking at roughly stock market returns, look right at about 10.5% over the last 50 years. So I live in one of the best real estate markets in the United States, which is Southern California, but you would still be hard pressed to find a property that is appreciated by 10% a year over the last 50 years. If you're looking at the professional management you get in REITs, in publicly traded REITs, and that's one of the things I like. I actually prefer publicly traded REITs because of their transparency and liquidity, and it's really easy to dispose of them if you need to. But if you look at that, you'd be hard pressed to actually find properties that are going to get 10% a year over 5 decades. So I'm actually really attracted to residential REITs right now, even though it's a boring sector. It's also one that's very attractive price wise. Is March my birthday? Mel, no, October is my birthday. Days orphan. Do you think theaters are a bad idea for a recovery play? Are theaters dead? I don't think theaters are ever going to be dead. I actually don't like going to theaters. I don't like sitting in the dark with a room with a bunch of strangers, and they're always dirty. But I realize that some people love the experience of the theater, and I've certainly loved it at times. Don't get me wrong, but I think it's for recovery play. It's possibly okay. I don't like recovery plays that much, just because I think you're going to end up mistiming some of that. So it's not an asset class that I would necessarily buy into. Kind of like cruise ships right now. I don't think cruise ships have the future that a lot of people think they do. I think that the age of going on cruises is pretty much over, and that's really kind of a baby boomer thing, and that's going to be reduced over time, where fewer and fewer people will see a canned tour of a place as attractive. Like, especially when you look at millennials, they prefer experience unplanned, unscripted experience over the sort of like canned things that we're doing here. So, all right. So high unemployment and high debt should impact REITs. It should, but that's the thing is like you would expect that non-payment of rent would be a lot higher than it has been, but rent collections have actually been not all that impacted, and also occupancy has been not all that impacted. So I was actually kind of surprised to take a look at those numbers. Solar energy companies to emulate Beam. Is Beam the company that's creating solar farms to do EV charging? That's the question I wanted to ask, because I took a look at a company like that, and I think it was Beam, but I can't really remember off the top of my head. So, is Zoom still a buy? That's the question. I don't understand why Zoom, even though I use Zoom, I don't understand why Zoom is a better deal or a better stock than some of these other companies that are out there that do internet meeting software. So that's kind of the issue right now. Is it's something I don't understand their huge run up and why they suddenly got popular when you have all these other types of meeting software. So is it a buy at this level? I'm not sure. I'm not sure that they're really protected from competition, or they're so far ahead. So as a long-term real estate broker, I understand and admire you stating the professional license restrictions you are under, things you can't do. Yeah, thank you. David, do you think NEO will drop after NEO Day? Well, yeah, probably. Companies tend to run up on the rumor and then sell on the news or sell on the event. So it'll probably have a little bit of a retraction after that. So I don't think it's guaranteed, but I do think that I think this week we're going to see. Every time I make predictions about stocks, though, like huge predictions like that, you always take a little bit of risk here. I don't think it's a risk to say that we're probably going to see a run up on NEO. Let me see here. Global warming isn't going to change until China and others like it. The U.S. is way ahead compared to others. Well, if you look at the number of electric vehicles that are being sold, and you look at the pace at which China is cleaning up, I would say that the market penetration for EVs and new energy vehicles is actually higher in China than it is in the US. When it comes to like dirty power generation, they're far behind us in that respect, but they're doing a lot to make up for that. So I'm not going to cast aspersions on an entire country or anything like that. And I'm saying that they're improving the situation there out of self-interest, not necessarily out of world interest. They're improving their environment because they want to do it. So thank you so much, Radwan. Radwan, is that how you pronounce your name? So okay. And I don't want to massacre your name, but that looks like a Moroccan or Tunisian name or something. So, hi, Jason. As a beginning investor, what is your opinion on dividend investor versus growth investing? Thanks. So, go look up a guy named Ben Felix on YouTube, and he did a video on the irrelevance of dividend investing. And so here's the thing. He makes some points. You should really be considering total return. Like your total return should be your metric when you're constructing a portfolio. The underlying dividend income is nice, and it gives you something to play with every month or every quarter, but you should be really looking at, like I said, total return in that respect. So if you traditionally, dividends accounted for about 40% of your portfolio's total return. So the average dividend in the 1950s was about 4%. The average dividend today is about 1.9%. So we're actually looking at dividends making up a much smaller portion of overall portfolio growth. And now more of that is pushed over. I mean, so the average return of the stock market hasn't really changed that much. So the larger portion of it is now capital appreciation rather than dividends. So a company doesn't get a tax deduction when they hand out a dividend. They're taxed on that income, right? They get to take a deduction for it, and then you're taxed on it as the person who receives the dividend, right? So there's not a huge reason for them to give dividends other than to make their stock price more attractive. And why is their stock price not all that attractive? It's because the company's not growing. They don't have that much growth anymore. So really think about looking at, go look at Ben Felix's video. And he actually works for a brokerage for a capital management firm up in Canada. And I think it's called the irrelevance of dividends. And it's a clickbaity title, but he's a very facts-oriented presenter, kind of like I am. So Okay. Beam is indeed a solar energy company. Patent when you find come to. I'm going to look more into that. Tommy Flanagan, do you do MMA? I did do MMA. Now today, I only train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I am in my I'm closer to 50 than I am 40. So the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is something you can do your whole life. You can't get punched in the face forever. So Aduan, great. I pronounced that correctly. So what benefits do you get for holding your stocks other than long-term capital gains? Superior returns over time. So, and I've been through this from a long time with financial planning. You know, a lot of times when I talk to people, they talk about buying the dips. In most cases, when we go back and we do the math and we actually compare what their portfolio would have been like if they just bought, or it was just dollar cost averaged in rather than buying the dips, they would have been better off just by buying in a lump sum almost at any price, or by dollar cost averaging your way in, and dollar cost averaging your way in over time, which is buying a little bit in even amounts, you know, at a regular interval. That usually won. Sort of the strategy of trying to buy and sell. Number one, it created taxable transactions, and number two, you were on the losing end of those taxable transactions a lot of times. So sell call options instead of receiving dividends. Not a bad strategy. Selling a covered call is not a bad strategy. If you're, if the stock gets called, you just repurchase the stock, and you don't have to pay commissions anymore. So that's a good thing. Well, I mean, you're still paying the commissions. It's coming out of the spread. So who can I get to do my stock taxes? My tax guy doesn't know anything about stock tax breaks. I need a dog. What firms are good? Well, first of all, I don't know where you are located, Nader, but there are lots of people that can do this, and your tax guy should be using software that does most of this for him, and you should be receiving a 1099-R or 1099-I or whatever it is, or a Form 5498 for whatever you're doing in terms of making a contribution to your IRA or receiving interest, and that would have the capital gains information that you need on there. It'll be classified as either short-term or long-term gain or loss. And he would just literally be entering it into some software. And then, Cathy, when should I sell Xpeng? I've got them at 50 and 50 shares. No, Cathy. I think Xpeng is a long-term hold. And I think that 5 years from now, you'll be looking at $50 per share. That's something pretty cheap. So I invest in Bitcoin, 18%, 30% rich. Yeah, all right, big capital does it all. Okay. I don't know what, I think that's an advertisement. I'm not sure. So I was wondering why I couldn't comment. Okay, guys. All right, so Xpeng and Neil versus Neil. Loved your Xpeng video. Thank you. Actually, you just subscribed today, Seth. I saw your comment from today. I worked really hard on that Xpeng video, and I got a lot of hate mail for that, which was kind of surprising. I have a hard time selling my stocks. Any tips? I only choose long term. Like I said, I did a video called 4 Reasons You Should Sell Your Stocks. I suggest you take a look at that video, and that's literally my personal reasons why I sell a stock. The 2 reasons I'm going to sell a stock right now are, number 1, I've achieved my goal, or number 2, I think that that stock is no longer a good decision, not because of any short-term concern, but because I think that entire industry or that it is going in the tank. So, is it a good time to add more to your Tesla positions, or are you expecting near-term pullback? So I'm not adding my Tesla positions right now, or at least I'll do it little by little, just because, like I said before earlier in the cast, business opportunities right now. I'm probably going to look at purchasing some distressed business right here. Like, I could buy a bar here in California for less than what you can get the liquor license for, just because they're in so much trouble. So I'm probably going to be investing in something like that. Why is BYD rarely mentioned? I don't have an answer for that, Nate. Nate Highlander, why is BYD rarely mentioned? I don't really have an answer for that, other than the fact that it's seen as a more established player. And while they make vehicles, that's not the only thing they make. They make a lot of electronic components as well, like the I can't remember the name of it right now, but I made a big deal of it. And they make a lot of semiconductors too. I just can't think of it right now. And then all these algorithms follow some patterns. Xpeng delivery number. My Xpeng delivery number. I just want to see about 130% or a 30% improvement over the prior month. And it needs to be at least a 30% improvement over the prior month for me to be really happy, because December is the largest month for car sales in China traditionally. It's like car buying season. So while I'm very excited about what NIO did, why I'm really excited is because they're hitting the top of their production ability right now. I'm not all excited the fact that they had this huge jump up in sales in December, because this is traditionally the month where you have the most amount of sales. So you'll actually, if they have another 30% jump next month and the month after that, then I'll be enormously satisfied. But Xpeng should have at least a 30% jump over last month, which I think they were just under 5,000 vehicles last month. So Xpeng at 120 a year, NIO at 200. I don't know about it. Would be nice. I don't know about that. But yeah. So BYD isn't an American, and they don't have a cult leader. To some degree, that's true about the cult leader. If you look at William Li, He Xiaopeng, and Li Sheng, the founders of those three auto companies, each one of those guys has been called the Elon Musk of China. They're part of sort of an elite entrepreneur class where they have the history of entrepreneurship behind them, kind of like Elon Musk did. Do I think they're geniuses like Elon? I'm sure they're a lot smarter than I am, but I don't think they could design a rocket like Elon did. I mean, if you guys don't know that Elon was actually the engineer for SpaceX for their first couple of launches until they finally had a successful one. So for the first three failures, and I think they failed 3 times in a row, he was the primary engineer on those rockets. And then they finally had a successful one. And then finally they were able to hire like really good engineers. And when you asked Elon why, he was like, well, I couldn't afford to hire the best engineers, and there's no point in hiring ones that are just adequate. So he was the main engineer for SpaceX, which I think is absolutely stunning. I would bet that none of those 3 guys could do the same thing. I mean, I highly respect them, but I don't think that they're going to be able to do that. I think that he's kind of a special case. Here's one thing that will not surprise me if it eventually happens. And I kind of did a story on this before about the battery electric vehicle is going to end the energy wars, which we've been in a century of conflict that has been driven by securing energy supplies now. I see that coming to an end here in the next 50 years. We're going to have new reasons for conflict, of course. But I see that. I think it's actually possible that Elon Musk would one day get a Nobel Peace Prize for creating an industry that ended the energy wars. And I know people think that's probably a crazy idea, but but like crazier people have been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. But I think they actually would have a shot at winning it one day, because I think that the geopolitical world is going to be remade here in the next 2 decades because of what's going on with energy. We had a century of conflict now that has been driven by securing energy supplies, and that's all going to change. But anyway, guys, I'm getting really hungry. It's 5:45, and I smoked some sausage today, some homemade sausage on my grill, and smoked some chicken. And I'm sorry, my smoker outside, and it's getting time for me to eat, and my kids are getting hungry. So I am going to call this an end today. I want to say thank you very much. If you guys did the super chat thing and I miss you, I don't think I did, but if you guys did any of the super chats and I miss you, I'm sorry. I'll go back and look through and send you guys a little note. I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on today. And I did want to say that check out my Patreon. I'm going to start putting the link on my page and all that stuff. It's getting started. I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to Patreon, so bear with me, please. I'm even surprised today that my microphone and my camera are actually working together. But anyway, thank you very much, guys, and I will see you next time. You can feel free, as always, to tell me how wrong you think I am in the comments today. Have a nice evening.